Hi, this is Kelsey Fikowski, and in this video we're going to go over the two FRQs you will see on the AP US Government and Politics exam as a result of the coronavirus. So this video is only applicable for the 2020 exam. If you are seeing this video beyond 2020, I do have a video on how to conquer the other four FRQs that you're going to see. And as you probably already know from your wonderful AP Gov teachers, this will only feature units 1 through 3 only. You will only have 40 minutes of total exam time to write it, and you can actually handwrite it. However, I'm going to really suggest for most of you to type it because you can type a heck of a lot faster than you can handwrite it. However, if you really want to handwrite it, then by all means, but I think you'll have much more time to really get your ideas together if you're going to type it. But that, of course, is just a suggestion. So the first FRQ that you're going to encounter is that argumentative essay. It is going to be a little bit different. This is your standard one with your standard rubric, and it's going to take most of these aspects here. However, it's going to be slightly changed. Now, note you will only have 25 minutes. This is the hardest FRQ out of the four types that you've been practicing over the years, over the course of the year. So it's going to look exactly similar to this scenario. So, for example, the United States Constitution establishes a federal system of government. Under federalism, policymaking is shared between national and state governments. Over time, the powers of the national government have increased relative to those of the state government. Develop an argument about whether the expanded powers of the national government benefits or hinders policy making. And here, of course, you have the provided foundational documents that you've read over the course of the school year, and it's very important to have these down. So this type of question will look the same, but how it's going to get scored is going to be a little bit different. Now, in terms of this, you'll see it being worth a total of 7 points. So big thing here, you're going to have to put forth a thesis, right? A thesis slash claim. It is very important that you do not just simply restate this prompt. You have to make an argument. If you can answer yes or no to your thesis statement, that is not a thesis statement. You want to either argue in this particular scenario that having a strong national government helps policy making, or it doesn't help policy making, and you want to provide reasons. A classic scenario in terms of format is to simply put, the national government should have expanded powers because of reasons A, B, and C. Something similar to that format. Or the government should not have too many, expanded powers because of reasons A, B, and C. Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind that you want to respond to the prompt. Do not restate or rephrase. Otherwise, you're really going to tank your entire essay. Now, for the evidence piece here, you can get a total of 4 points, which is a little bit different from the other rubric, but it's, again, generally the same. You need to use 2 pieces of evidence that is specific and relevant. So you can't just pull out, just say, Supreme Court. I mean, what does that mean? Okay, how are you going to relate that? It has to be specific, it has to be relevant, and direct to what your thesis statement is saying. So if you're going to use the argument that the national government should have expanded powers, well, you might say, well, look at Articles of Confederation. Look what happened to the nation's government when you had the states having the bulk of the power. It just didn't work, right? So you would need to not only mention that, of course, that is one of the foundational documents. You need to explain the document, and then on top of that, you need to relate this back to your thesis, right? You just don't want to put evidence there. You want to relate it back. You want to support it. So note that the evidence that you're going to pick here, one, of course, has to be the foundational document, and you want to be able to support the claim, explain it, right? So make sure that is definitely there in your body paragraphs. I would suggest exactly 1 paragraph for each piece of evidence. In terms of, another piece of evidence, you could certainly use Brutus 1 or Federalist 10 or anything outside of this as well. You could even refer to perhaps the Commerce Clause being very important in terms of regulating safety and outlawing discrimination, or however you see fit in terms of, wanting to support your thesis. Next is the reasoning point, and this is very, I think the trickiest part, but it's not too difficult, right? To earn these 2 points, you need to be able to explain how or why the 2 pieces of evidence support the claim or thesis. So it's really where you're going to be elaborating off of your two pieces of evidence from your previous paragraph. You want to explain the relationship, so especially if you can connect that piece of evidence with your other piece of evidence as well as supporting your thesis statement, that is really the way to go. So you really want to explain the relationship between the evidence provided and the thesis, right, for both pieces of evidence. The more elaboration, the better. So that's really the gist of it. So that's how you can get those 7 points. Again, really making sure you have a direct claim thesis that can't be answered with a yes or no, utilizing two pieces of evidence, explaining that evidence, and then connecting that evidence back to your thesis or claim here. And I would even say, even if you can connect the two pieces of evidence together, even better. You will note that the difference here is that you do not have to refute or provide an alternative perspective like the original rubric. So if you look at the original one, right, you don't have to do this last part here, okay? So just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, and then FRQ2, you will only have 15 minutes, but this one is a heck of a lot more straightforward. It's the concept application, and this is worth 40% of your overall score, whereas the first FRQ is worth 60% of your overall score. So if you read this example here, and I won't read it, if you want to just pause it and read it, that's fine. This comes straight out of the sample AP government overview. But if it asks you, for example, describe an action Congress could take to address the concerns of the interest group in the scenario, simply, saying that Congress can pass a law, right? And of course, you note the word describe. So that means not one sentence. That means elaborating, explaining how that law is very important in terms of addressing the interest group, in particular, this case, the Alliance Defending Freedom interest group. How is that law going to be important? Why is that going to help address their concerns? And then if you look in Part B, you're going to be using that, based on what the action you said in Part A, to explain how partisan divisions could prevent the action described in Part A. Well, again, notice the word explain. You want to elaborate. So you could say partisan, that, there's going to be policy gridlock perhaps in Congress. That's going to be difficult if you have Republicans and Democrats who don't agree. It's going to make it difficult for that law or for that bill to really get passed in both chambers of Congress. You could also expand that the president, if the president's from a different political party than Congress, you have a good chance of a veto, and we know that many vetoes do not get overridden. And then in Part C, explain why the Alliance Defending Freedom might argue that their constitutional rights are threatened by the Johnson Amendment. Well, again, anytime you think about, religious freedom, you should always think about the First Amendment. So you might, explain that the First Amendment guarantees separation of church and state, and you might want to, expand off of that and explaining, from the point of view of Alliance Defending Freedom. And again, this is not something that you want to say that you agree or disagree with. You just want to show the AP graders that you understand the concepts, you know how to apply these concepts. So we're not giving our own opinion, we're just showing, hey, we know how Congress works, right? They could pass a law here, but we know that if there's divisions based on political parties, that makes it difficult. And then even more, we know our amendments, the First Amendment, the Johnson Amendment, with respect to what's being described here, one could argue that freedom of religion could be violated here. So I think this FRQ is much more forward. It doesn't require too much of elaboration, doesn't require, I don't think, too much time. Whereas when you look at the first FRQ, you really want to make sure that you are adhering to this rubric. So again, making sure you have your thesis, your evidence, and you're explaining your evidence, connecting it back to your thesis in claim. So I hope this video helps. Best of luck if you are taking the AP government exam, and just do your best. We are in uncharted times, and if you have any questions, comments, I'll certainly answer them in the comments below. Thank you.